Welcome to another episode of Value Tech with UD. I'm trying to bridge the gap between the business and technology. And today we have our guest, AJ Andrew Tjaden, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Stractix. Welcome, AJ.
Thank you for having me. Happy to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining with me today. And let's start with your first theme. You cut onboarding from 2 weeks to 5 days at VERO, right? So, what's the counterintuitive move you made that most companies would never dare to try?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I found with onboarding is simplifying everything. We try and put the cart before the horse, and what a lot of people need to do, and especially companies, is put yourself in the customer's shoes. Understand what their first goal is. What's their next goal? Look at different ways to not only be faster but more successful. Everyone wants to use a product very quickly, but at risk, they're not using it successfully. I'd much rather have a client be excited about using the software and start saying, here are the first five things that you guys should be doing based on what you guys want. And then here are the next five things. So it kind of really creates this very exciting time for them to say, okay, we've completed the first five things. What's next? Okay, what are the next five things? What are the next five things? And getting them excited. And that's how we were able to reduce onboarding from 2 weeks to 5 days, because we got them excited. We listened to customers, but we also kept it fun. And I think that's what helped us separate us with VERO and implementing not only faster, but more effectively.
Awesome, that's very impressive. So when you are doing at that scale, we know you already managed portfolios of size like a 85 million dollars, right? It's so glamorous. So what's the ugly truth about scaling an enterprise accounts that nobody talks about?
It's going to take time. There is no secret formula to go fast. Enterprise accounts, and when I say enterprise, for me, it really depends on how many users in the SaaS world or how much annual recurring revenue that companies are looking for. These enterprise accounts have a lot more structure and a lot more rules that they have to follow rather than the smaller accounts. So listening to them, and the ugly truth is it's going to take time, but you need to do it correctly, because whatever you do, and if you do it too fast with them, they're going to get frustrated, and you're going to lose a lot more revenue with these bigger accounts by not giving them the attention that they need.
Good strategy. So upsells often feels very forced, right? So how do you turn what could be a sales pitch into a moment where the client asks you for more?
Yeah, the biggest thing, so I would break it down to two things to keep in mind with upselling. The first thing with upselling is that people buy from people. They don't buy products. So being that trusted advisor is extremely important. But then upselling is understanding, is it a need or a want? Do they want something more, or do they need something? And that's where people, and I found clients, have been very thankful for me not to push and say, hey, I'm trying to hit my number. It's more of, hey, I want to continue working with you guys, but you guys are wanting some new functionality. Can you tell me more about that? And that opens up a better framework for talking to them and understanding what their needs are versus their wants. I'd always joke with clients, I'm a big golfer. So for me, do I need new golf clubs or do I want new golf clubs? And that's the biggest thing that I find that kind of breaks the ice and the tension with clients.
Interesting. And what's the single most costly mistake companies make in renewals? And how do you sniff it out before it blows up?
The biggest thing I think a lot of companies have with renewals is they wait too long. If it's a year-long contract, the renewal starts the day that they sign the contract for that year. The renewal is not something to focus on at the 11th hour. It's not something to focus on in 3 months. It's something that you have to continuously ask them and bring in that conversation and have that honest conversation with each other. Talk to them and say, hey, contract's coming up here in 6 months. How do you feel about where you're at? Obviously, they don't want to move to a new software. They're happy with where they're at, but is it a price? Is it a functionality? Are they embracing it enough? And that's where I think for the renewal part, everyone has to own it. It's not just customer success or sales, it's support, it's the leadership, it's product, it's design, it's the engineering. Everyone needs to be a part of it for it to be successful.
Great. So, because you're talking about the customer success, so let's jump onto our customer success and retention portion. So many SaaS leaders preach customer first, right? So, but inside the boardrooms, revenue always comes first. And how do you win that tug of war?
Oh gosh. Well, if you want to steal my playbook, you'd have to hire me. But, my number one rule is listen to the customers. My grandmother taught me you have two ears, one mouth, use that ratio. And that's how we were able to achieve a renewal rate north of 90% year over year. And that's because I listened to what the customers needed, not what they wanted. Now, we did listen to what they wanted, but the need far outweighed the want. And part of that was understanding, do they want more functionality? Do they want a longer term? Are they trying to save money? What are they trying to do without trying to push them on it? I never want to sell a product to a client that doesn't need it. It doesn't serve them in the long term. It doesn't serve the company in the long time. And it's a waste of time, in my personal opinion.
You got a great advice from your grandma. Your your land and expand strategies boosted MRR dramatically. So, what's the trick to expanding without the client feeling like a target?
I think it's working with them. When you're working with a client in the SaaS world, they're looking to you as a trusted advisor. And once you land that client, it's not just trying to keep them for a year. Your goal is to be their best friend and someone that's going to call you and say, "Hey, AJ, I have a quick question about this." And being intrigued of why are they asking that question? How can we work together to make this benefit everyone? That's where clients want, if you were to say, "Hey, I want to buy this product for a year," that maybe isn't the right customer. I'd want a customer that says, "I'm really interested in seeing where you guys are going to be in 3 to 5 years. This serves our need right now, but in the next 18 months or 24 months, you guys are putting out a new product. How can we work with you guys to make that product even better?" That's one of the successful strategies I use for landing and expanding clients is continue to improve the process, but also the product from listening to customers.
Fantastic. So, every sales leader will have their own strategies, right? So, when your ROI strategy doesn't work, what's the story that you pull out that actually moves executives to sign?
The biggest thing that I love when the return on investment doesn't work with executives is I like to ask them, okay, what's what software are you going to use rather than with us? It's a simple question. And it's not trying to gauge, okay, are they better? Are they cheaper? But a lot of executives don't want to waste time nor money on implementing a new software that they've just been using and trying to gauge what they're trying to achieve with that product. And, with us, with VERO, which is an AI software company that worked with fraud prevention for multifamily units, that's a mouthful. We found that clients don't want to go from one product to the other. They want security, they want safety, but they also want to see it improving. And part of that was showing them, hey, you've been with us for 6 months. Why are you going to jump ship now to move to another product where you're going to spend 6 months implementing and you're not 100% sure? It's going back to the drawing board, understanding why they signed with you, talking with the sales team, having that honest conversation and saying, what do we need to do to make this work? Is it, everyone thinks that it's all price. For me, it's more about what's the vision, the trust, and how is the product going to evolve time over time.
Right. So, next question would be, imagine if you have to write a survival guide for a startup CEO, what three hard rules would be the non negotiable for you?
Oh gosh, churn survival guide. The first rule is you're always going to have churn. There's no company out there that's going to say we keep 100% of all of our accounts. You're going to have bad actors. So you're going to have churn. The second is you have to learn from that churn. And there's three ways to learn from it. what the customer tells you, what you think the customer, why you think the customer left, and the third is what the data tells you of why the customer left. That's going to allow you to see trends of why customers are leaving, so that way you can replicate so that it doesn't happen in the future. And then the last is owning it. Churn is, like I said, a company wide strategy, and everyone owns it. If you leave it to one department, such as customer success, it's not going to be as beneficial compared to if sales was involved, support, customer success. Everyone has to own it from the top down.
Interesting. And I know you are also an AI strategist, and I know personally you have a very good technology background, which a lot of sales leaders, other sales leaders lack. So nowadays, it's all about AI. Everyone is talking about AI, right? There is a lot of hype around the AI. What's the biggest scam you have seen disguised as AI transformation in the customer success?
If I had $1 for every time someone said that AI is going to take my job away, I could probably afford eggs in this economy. Um, but for me, the biggest scam is when someone says that AI is going to be easy and it's going to fix all of our problems. It's not. AI is not your next, in my opinion, AI is not your next VP of strategy. It's not your next VP of sales. It's not your next VP of customer success. AI is another tool to add to your belt to utilize. And a lot of people think it's a plug and chug and it's going to work out and we don't have to do anything. That's when, if you remember, one of my favorite stories with AI is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original movie, the one where Charlie's grandfather gets let go from the factory because robots come and replace him. And then at the end of the movie, his grandfather goes back to the factory to fix the machines that replaced him. That's what AI is. Companies need to understand that it is here. You have to embrace it, but you also need people that understand it and utilize it every day. It's not something to just say, okay, we've set it up. Now let's see how it runs, and we'll revisit it in 2 weeks or in a week. It's something you have to continuously learn because there's 20 to 30 new AI tools coming out every day that people are like, how do I use this? How do I implement this? And it goes back to the need versus the want. Do you need it or do you want it because it's the new shiny toy that everyone's talking about?
That's a great story. So on the flip side, what's an AI hack you have used that feels almost unfair because of how effective it is?
Oh gosh, this is going to get me in trouble. ChatGPT. It is the best tool out there because originally it was the first AI tool out there that people used. I love using it because it's great for helping me structure my emails. It also allows me to help with different projects that I'm working on, where I can say, does this what are the strengths and weaknesses of this strategy for this certain project? And then if I were to place this in a certain location with this many users at this timeline, what's the percentage of this being successful or not? And then seeing how that would apply. And I use ChatGPT almost every day. I use it when we were just talking before this, how we went to Europe. My wife, my mother in law, and I went to Europe for about 10 days. I used ChatGPT to help plan trips. I asked it, does it make more sense for me to fly from London to Edinburgh or a train? And it gave me all this information. That was huge. And, I do a lot of traveling, but seeing it and saying, here's the typical cost, here's the benefits, here's some of the weaknesses of why you don't want to fly or not take the train. And essentially, we took the train, or we actually took the plane because it made more sense financially, but also time saving. And that was something that ChatGPT had asked me, saying, what do you value the most?
That's very interesting. So you also handle the cybersecurity clients like DOJ and DOD, right? So how do you convince the clients that AI won't compromise the trust when their data is mission critical?
Great question. So, a lot of working with cybersecurity and these government entities that have so high regulations, such as NIST 800, you have to understand what the government is allowing you to use or not. Right now, AI is so new that the government can't keep up with the regulations. So to make sure that it's not compromised, you have to have certain security measures in place. It's kind of like if you have a castle and your data inside is the king. How many levels of security do you have? Do you have a moat? Do you have how many bridges do you have? All these different things that you're doing to protect, is AI a part of it? And if so, what are some fallbacks or what are some safeguards if AI falls? Because there are bad actors out there with DOJ and DoD companies that are trying to take your data away. So if one gate fails, what's the next gate? What are some safeguards that you have in place to protect not only your data, but your client's data as well?
Great. Now you are talking like a tech leader. So you have led the global teams, right, across the globe and across cultures and time zones. What was the hardest cultural clash moment you had to solve, and how did you turn it into an alignment?
Yeah, great question. So contrary to popular belief, blonde hair, blue eyes, I grew up in Asia for 13 years. I was actually born in South Korea, uh, and then worked in China for a couple of years with Nike. And when I was leading our global team over there, the biggest thing was me being, a white male, blonde hair, blue eyes, but I spoke Mandarin. And the biggest cultural clash for me was, how do I manage a team that I'm in the US half the time, but then I'm also in Asia and traveling, and my team, and this is before remote work was really getting up and going during COVID. And what we did is we had weekly stand ups and we would have reports to each other of, this is where we're at, this is what we're trying to do. And I learned it from my very first startup that I was a part of. Toby was his name, CEO, and he taught me you have to have your PPPs. What is your plan for the week? What is your progress of the week? And what are any problems that arose? That allowed me to work with my team and say what's not working and what isn't. And being in Asia, asking people for feedback, asking them for what can we do to improve is so important. But then on the flip side, talking to each other and having that dialogue, where I found working in China, it's very, you have to do this from, and that's it. I wanted to, when I was leading a team, I lead from the front. I like to ask my team members, hey, what do you think of this process? How can we improve this area? And they were very taken back by it. And part of it was saying, okay, we're going to do this together rather than you guys put on the event and figure it out yourself. I'm going to be at the hotel and do my own thing. I was at every event. I was on site talking with people and bringing people along because I wanted them to succeed. And that's where bringing everyone together was so powerful and so instrumental that I learned in the US that I wanted everyone that I worked with, whether they were in Asia, in Europe, South America, to say, you are a part of a team and be proud of your work.
Thank you for sharing the triple P plan, progress, and problems. That's very interesting. And under extreme revenue pressures, leaders often crack. Can you share a time when you almost did, and what pulled you back?
Oh gosh, I'm not gonna lie. We've all had times where we crack. I'm not perfect. I'm the least one, but the biggest thing is, when I grew up part half my life in Iowa, I have this farming mentality. Okay, now let me be clear. We're not all farmers in Iowa, but I'm a very firm believer that we have the mentality of rolling up your sleeves and getting it done. And for us, we were losing revenue when I came in with Sharetru. We were having such a high churn rate, and no one wanted to address it. And it's, hey, we're losing $1-2 million in revenue every year, but we're gaining, 3 to 4 million on the other side. And I said, well, there's a big problem. No one wanted to tackle it. So within my first 3 months, part of being the director of customer success at Sharetru, I rolled up my sleeves and I said, let's look at the data. Let's understand why we're losing customers and start seeing trends of that. And part of that is I spent lots of hours going through it. And that's where we were able to identify that in the last 3 years of clients leaving, 73% of customers that left had 4 similar traits that I then went to the sales team and said, if any of these customers have 2 or 3 of these 4 traits, you cannot bring them in. And they said, well, it's hurting our numbers. And I said, well, it's hurting the company's numbers more than your numbers. And I didn't want that. So we started to identify new clients, new strategies of growing and building, because you rolled up your sleeves and we said, I said, I'm going to own this. And it was great. And it's scary at the same time, but you have to do it. You can't just say, you know what, this is for someone else. I'm going to throw it over the fence and figure out if someone else wants to do it. Me, I'm like, let me do it. Let me be the first one in to attack the fire and put it out.
That's interesting. So it is often evident that sales and customer success often clash. Can you recall a deal where the two sides were at war and how you managed to save both the account and the team dynamic?
Yeah, which I find is one of my favorite questions and topics to talk about is sales and customer success. Because a lot of people don't realize, and customer success is a very new term. Customer success is if sales and support had a baby and made customer success. Sales is focused on new business, and customer success is focused on return business. And a lot of people don't know this, but renewals and return business is 6 times more profitable than new business. Now, you always have to have new business. When I was at VERO, I worked very closely with the sales team. And that was because if they were bringing in clients, I wanted them to own it, but I also wanted the client to know that we worked as a team. So at VERO, we had one of our largest accounts come in, and Wendy was her name, who is our champion for the team. And she did not have a great sales experience. And she told me right off the bat, she said, I don't like this, but my team, our executives thinks we need this. And I said, okay, what are you trying to achieve? And we simply sat and talked about this. And I looked through the notes that sales had given me to say, this is what Wendy's trying to achieve. Here's her goals. Here's her timeline. There were no correlation between the two. And that's where I had to sit down with sales afterwards. And I said, hey, I'm hearing something different from Wendy. And they said, well, this is what she told us. And I said, can we all jump on a call and clarify the room? Let's start fresh. She's signed the contract. She's worked with us. How do we make this happen for the client? Put our egos aside because they're trying to, again, put it over the wall and say, AJ, fix this. At the end of the day, we all sat down and I said, hey, Wendy, can you tell me specifically what you're trying to achieve in the next 30, 60, and 90 days? And what does it look like in a year? We wrote it down. We documented that. And then from there, it wasn't a pointing the finger at sales, say, you're wrong and we're right. It was more of how do we make sure this doesn't happen? So then from what we started doing with sales is we would have weekly calls with sales to ask them, and I'd be with our sales director, who I think is one of the best in the business. And I said, anytime you guys have sales coming through the pipeline that are potentially going to close, please bring us in and let's have a 10 to 15 minute conversation and address 5 things. Who's the company? Who's the champion? Or who's going to be our main point of contacts, our POCs? The second are what are their top 3 goals that are important for them? What are they trying to achieve? And realistically, when can we achieve it? Don't give me a BS answer to say, well, we can do this in 2 months. Can we? Or is this going to take 3 to 4 months because of functionality? The fourth that I always ask them for to put down is any additional information, such as they don't like having meetings on Friday afternoons. Their busy times are in March and October. Maybe their favorite food is barbecue, something that I can connect with them on. And then the last part I would always talk with our sales team is you have to put in any red flags that you see. And that was the key indicator. Because again, sales is trying to get the business in. And I'm not against sales. I think they're phenomenal what they do. But you have to work together for the customer. And that fifth item, the red flags of, you know, oh, they're slow to sign contracts. They're very price concerned. They show up to meetings 10 minutes late. Or, one that we found out that I wish I would have known is, hey, Wendy never saw a demo of the product. Her leadership team had said, use this service. This is going to be our next big tool. Because that then gives me an idea to be ahead of the game and say, okay, how can I mitigate and really handle this situation delicately while still putting the client first and not saying, hi, I'm AJ. Tell me about what you like about our product. Instead, I can say, hey, Wendy, really excited for you to join. I understand that here are your top 3 goals and here's your timeline, but I also want to address a couple of questions that you had. Can we go from there? From there, I sound confident, I sound trustworthy, but also I sound like someone that wants to work with them and not just trying to sell them on something. And that's where I'm very, with sales and customer success, it's not a lot of clashing if it's done right. But that's where I would always have my customer success team talk with the sales team, ask them how can we be better, because sales will always come to us and say, hey, this client really likes us. Do you have any referrals? And of course, we're going to give them to them. But referrals are a whole nother animal that a lot of people you know, don't do very well because they think, oh, this is an easy sell. If the client's happy, they'll more than happy to refer you to someone that could benefit from your service. If they're not happy and you ask for a referral, they're going to keep their book shut and say, nope, I'm not going to share this with anyone because I don't want them to have that experience. And that's what I always avoided. And I always would ask them, do you like what you're doing? Do you see me as someone that is a part of your team rather than a part of the software that you're buying? And who can benefit from this product that you're so happy working with?
So how do you decide whether you're going to refer or not?
For if I'm going to ask them if they're going to refer or not,
Yeah.
for me, it's a judgment call. I always like to wait at least until after the first renewal. Unless someone's like, this is the best thing in the world, we should have had this 6 months ago or 6 years ago. I like to see in that first year, that 6 month mark, what they're liking about the product. Is there a certain service that they like? How are they doing on the renewals? Are they using the platform? Because the last thing I want to do is call someone and say, hey, Jim, I understand you guys aren't using the product, but who would be someone that could really like this product? Instead, I'd much rather help them use the service, and then they can go out to the world and say, hey, we're using VERO or Sharetru or SmartMoving, and ask them and say, hey, you got to use this product. AJ's on the team. He's going to be one of the best implementation or customer success managers that they have, and he's the one that will help you get to where you need to be. Here's his contact information. It's a lot better if it's more proactive than reactive. And when clients start talking to you and saying, hey, I have a good friend, I always like to ask them, okay, tell me more about them. What are their likes? What are the dislikes? Who are they using? Why do you think they're a good fit? Because referrals, when we were at SmartMoving, which is a moving software company, if a company gave us a referral, they got 10% off of, I believe, their next month or a year-long contract if they gave us a referral, if that customer signed for up to 3 months. So they're trying to save money on themselves, while in turn saying, hey, here's my friend that could really benefit from your service, and asking them, are they a good fit customer? Because the last thing you want to do is get a referral of a bad fit customer, and then you're trying to play catch up and you're trying to help them when it's just not a good fit.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that insights. And because we are talking about the sales, so let's talk about your sales strategy and partnerships, right? So you closed Sharetru's largest ever deal. Walk us through the boldest risk you took in that process and why it worked out.
Great question. I can't take credit for all of that. That was a group effort with the sales team. And part of that was we were very well aligned all together. Sales team came and said, we have this huge customer coming through. They need A, B, and C. Here's our timeline. And I said, okay, when's their onboarding? When are we going to have a conversation with them? They said, well, we'd like to have one tomorrow. I said, we can't. This is the largest account, and you can do things three ways. You can do it fast, you can do it cheap, or you can do it right. Well, for me, it's always going to be done right. And then the second is, you want to do it fast or you want to do it cheap? I don't want to do it cheap, but I also don't want to do it fast. So for me, it has to be done right. And talking with the team, we had to create an entire layout, a timeline. We brought in some new tools such as Trello and various project management tools to make sure that everyone is aligned and everyone is working together and everyone owns it. So when we were meeting with the client and they saw 5 people on our team and they were talking about, here's our certain projects, here's what we're doing, I could confidently say, Susan on our team is going to be responsible for A, B, and C, and here's the deadline. Here is John, who's going to be in charge of C, D, and E, and here's their timeline of when it's going to be accomplished and who owns it. And putting that and documenting it in front of the entire team, not just internally, but also to the customer, was one way that we were able to secure that, but also the product. They wanted to understand and use our product, but they just didn't want to sign a year-long contract. They want to sign multi-year contract. But part of that came with stipulations. Well, we would like this functionality. We would like this functionality, or this feature would be perfect for us. And I would simply ask, okay, how can, and that's where we had to bring on our product team and say, well, is this feature going to benefit everyone, or is it just going to benefit them? And all their functionalities were something that we wanted to do later down the road. So we had to make a game time decision of, let's finish the current features that you're working on, and then let's build what they would like and beta test with them so they feel confident that, one, we're building something for them and it's correct, and they're going to be really excited to use it and continuously using, rather than just saying, okay, here's this new functionality, it's great, whoop-de-doo.
Right. Interesting. So now let's talk about the SMBs versus the large enterprises, right? What is a strategy that works beautifully in one but is almost guaranteed to fail in the other?
For me, between SMB and enterprise, the biggest thing is having the same customer journey for both customers. To say, hey, you're going to have a onboarding, you're going to have 2 trainings, you're going to have a session, and then you're going to figure it out on your own. Might work for an SMB, but for an enterprise, it's going to take a little longer. They might have leadership that wants to join these calls. They might have some more functionality or more with Sharetru, a cybersecurity company. They maybe had more restrictions that they had to enforce or more rules that an SMB didn't. And that's where every customer is on a customer journey, but having separate ones that are similar but are different in their own sense of maybe length, maybe certain projects, maybe who they're engaging with or how quickly people are engaging with them is also a key indicator. Enterprise customers, I found, expect to get responses within 24 hours. SMB like to have responses within 12 hours. So having that response and that trust to each one is so important, but then owning it as well, I think, is extremely important.
And when do you know it's time to stop fighting for a client and walk away?
Huh. Well, that's the toughest thing, is to say we want to walk away. And that's when you have to, for me, I would always think, and I'd always ask them, is this something that you like? And if they're asking for requests and saying, I want to have this feature and this feature and this feature, and they're making unreasonable requests and they are just tearing the system down and saying, this isn't what we like, you simply have to ask them, hey guys, why why do you sign up for our services? And you have to, because there are bad customers in there, but you have to almost make them be the ones to say, you know what, this isn't working out. I'm never going to try and walk away from a deal because I want it to work. I'm going to try as hard as I can to make sure that it's going to happen. At the same time, for me, walking away and giving up is very difficult to do because I don't like giving up on all of those items. And that's where walking away is tough. I'm not going to lie. But for the health of the team and the health of the company, you have to say at some point that, hey, I've had enough. Listen, I don't think this is working out. You might have to give some money back to them to say, hey, sorry for your time. I always like to refer them to maybe some competition or a product that they might need, which a lot of salespeople won't do. If I can help a customer find the right tool, they're going to always come back to me and say, hey, AJ, this, thank you so much. You know, you are a lot different from others. I never would put down a competitor because, one, it doesn't look good to the company. It doesn't make me feel good. But three, if there's a way that I can help a client, that I'm going to help, stand out to everyone. But also, we're human. We want people to be kind to each other. And walking away is tough, but it's necessary to do for both parties in that stance.
It's interesting. So, in your current company at Stractix, right, almost half of your clients came from referrals. What did you do that made clients want to sell for you?
Yeah, great question. The biggest thing that I found, especially with Jocelina, is we embrace change, but also we want to work with customers. We're a part of a family. It's not just to say, hey, you're coming in and we're going to give you, here's what we think, and you have to figure it out. We like to finish from A to Z. And that's where the clients that want to sell for us is because we were a part of their company, we're a part of their family. And it's not so much of, hey, you owe us money and this is what it is, and then here's the services. It's, here's what we want to accomplish, here's how we can work long term together, and then also what can we do better. And it's being honest with everyone and being trustworthy to each other. If something's not working, you have to have those difficult conversations. And that's where I've found with Stractix and just life in general, having those early conversations with people that are difficult are necessary. You don't want to wait till the last minute to say, oh gosh, we should have had this conversation 4 months ago when it was addressed and when it came up, and now we're down a rabbit hole and we're at the point of no return. For me, those referrals that wanted to sell for us essentially is because they had such a great service and they want other people to have that service as well. And that's where in any company, you want those clients that love your product, want to tell people about it, but then also you have to then put your money where your mouth is and say, okay, thank you so much. We will take care of them as well as we took care of you guys, and then continue to build that relationship. It's not a, hey, you signed with us. Okay, now you signed a referral for us. Thank you. It's continuing that conversation and continuing that relationship long term rather than just saying, okay, you're here with us for a year, figure it out on your own. I'd much rather say, hey, I'd love for you to stay for another year because these are some of the things that we're building and we're really excited for, that I think you guys are going to not only see a return on your investment, but also be really impactful in your line of business.
I totally agree with your comments. Your strategic CEO, Jocelina, she absolutely creates that family atmosphere. Yeah, I totally agree on that. And coming to what transforms a good partnership into a game-changing alliance that reshapes the whole business.
I think the best thing with partnership is being vulnerable, asking those questions that you're afraid to ask that you might not get the response for. Uh, I always joke that my wife is very similar, where she says, hey, I want you to do this. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want necessarily? Like, well, you should know what I want. Okay, well, tell me more about this. And that's where having that good partnership starts with open communication, setting the stage, having that, hey, let's put our egos aside, let's put our titles aside. Here are two people that want the same thing. How do we make it work? And it's not a good guy or a bad guy strategy. It's a simple AJ and Jocelina or AJ and John conversation to say, John, what are you trying to accomplish and how can I get you there? And simply just listening. Back to the grandmother, 2 ears, 1 mouth. People want to be heard. And by doing that, that was my favorite thing. When we would have, my favorite thing to do in any company is to work with difficult customers. And part of that is because they're the ones that want to give the most input. And with everything that we're doing, I would simply ask them. And I remember at VERO, we had, Sarah was her name, and she was not happy. And I think it was my third day in to the company. And she said, AJ, I don't like this system. This is ridiculous. Why are we even using it? And I said, well, tell me about it. And I was honest. I said, Sarah, this is my third day here. I'm so sorry. Can you please tell me what you don't like about the product? And I simply muted myself and I listened to her rant for an hour. And everything from she didn't like the sales process, she didn't like the implementation, the product wasn't working correctly. This, they're 3 months in and she told me, I don't want to do the renewal. And I said, okay. And after an hour, I unmuted myself and I said, Sarah, do you feel a lot better? And she was like, I do. And I said, okay, Sarah, it's my third day. How can I help you? And she said, well, do you have any ideas? I said, well, I do, but I want to hear what you think could be really beneficial for your needs right now. And I want to focus on the next week. I want to focus on the next 30 days. I want to focus on next 60 days. And I want to focus on the next 90 days because your renewal's coming up. And she's like, well, we're not even going to talk about renewal. I said, I know, but I want that in the background in our minds of how I can help you with that. So we built out a strategy. We built out and we documented all of this. And I said, this is what AJ's responsible for. This is what his team's responsible for. And this is what Sarah's going to do. And that partnership blossomed where after 3 weeks, she was using the system. She was calling and saying, AJ, I have a question about this. I'm like, absolutely. I made time for them. And after 2 months, she said, okay, let's talk renewal. And I'm like, really? She's like, you've changed because you became such a great partner. I trust you. You listened, but also you came up with a plan. And that's where I think people want to work with good people, but you also have to listen and then act upon it. And when I left VERO, that was one of the toughest calls that I had to make, was to call Sarah and say, hey, I'm leaving. And she was like, okay, then we're leaving the company as well. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like, we just spent a year and a half getting this set up for you. And she was so excited. And she was like, this has changed how we look at applications. And she was like, but you were the one that I really appreciated because you took the initiative. And at the same time, you were so beneficial in making this work that I don't trust anyone else. And that's where the partnership was so difficult for leaving, because I made so many good friends, both in the company, but then also with my clients. But at the same time, building that relationship was partly because of Sarah and all my other clients that wanted to work with me, that gave me a hard time because they cared. And at the end of the day, they were just such a great partnership.
That sounds like a great journey. So let's talk about your personal journey before we end up the show. Which role in your career broke you down the hardest, and what rebuilt you stronger?
Oh gosh. The biggest role in my career for me personally, that broke me the hardest was SmartMoving. When I was their first customer success manager and the fourth hire in the company. And part of that was because of the CEO. Toby was one of the most influential people that has made me who I am today. And that was because he cared. He pushed me to be 1% better every day. And when I first got the job offer from him in, I think it was April of 2019, I turned him down. And that was the toughest thing. Like, I turned him down to go work for American Airlines, and because I wanted the flashy thing, and he didn't like that. He wasn't happy. And then about 6, 7 weeks into working for American Airlines, I said, you know what, this isn't the right job for me. So I reached out to Toby and I said, hey, can we grab coffee? I want to talk more about this. And he said, sure. And we had coffee. And the first things I said out of my mouth were, I made a mistake 2 months ago. I would love to come back and work for you. And he accepted. And he said, I would love for you to come back. Everything that we agreed upon is the same. And I said, absolutely. But what Toby did for me was he broke down to say, I want you to help us build the customer success team. I want you to learn support. And when I was wrong, he leaned into me because he cared. And that was something, being there were only four of us, there were two engineers, and then Toby, who's the CEO, and myself. And Toby and I did sales and support and onboarding, just him and I in a WeWork in downtown Dallas. And when I was wrong, he told me, but he believed in me. And he said, hey, because you did this, this is what happened. Here's how we're going to fix it. And every day and every week, we continuously got better and better. And when I left SmartMoving, that was one of the hardest things to do because Toby was such a great mentor to me to help me be better, be more organized. One of my favorite things that I learned from him is using HubSpot or CRM. You had to log everything that you did. Call, email, text message, put in notes of who you're interacting with. I learned it from him, and he said if you didn't log it, it didn't count. And there were times where we both didn't log it, and we both were frustrated with each other. But it was because we both cared about it, and I think that's what really made me who I am today, especially in the customer success world, because about a year ago, he called and said, hey, I'd like you to come back and do some consulting for us. And I never expected to hear from him again. And he was someone that, one, was very influential, but two, the passion is there. And we both have grown, we both have matured. And maybe one day I would like to go back and work for him at SmartMoving. The company's grown from, when it was just four of us to, I think now they're at 25, maybe 30 people. And getting to go back and see some of the people and interact with everyone is just incredible and amazing. And, he was the one that really broke me down because he believed, but then he also built me up because he believed. And I think that was something that I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for him.
Right. That's interesting. Very interesting. So you have been in startups and also with the Fortune 500 companies, right? So which one forces you to be more creative and why?
Startups 100%, because every day is different. I call it organized chaos. Every day you don't know what you're doing, but you have to come in and you have to own it. You have to roll up your sleeves because there is no process. There's a strategy, but how do you implement that strategy successfully? And that's where I very much enjoy the startup world because you're learning a lot. You're meeting some great people that are like-minded, that are passionate and energetic. And then at the same time, I found that you get to be a little more free with what you do and be more creative. And that's where with SmartMoving, Sharetru, VERO, and Stractix, all these startup companies that I've been a part of in some form or fashion has allowed me to say, hey, we're doing it this way. How do we do it better? And say, okay, let's maybe not reinvent the wheel 100%, but maybe let's take bits and pieces there where the corporate world or the Fortune 500 companies, they've been there for years upon years, and we've done this forever, and we're not going to change. Where startups, you have to evolve, you have to change, or you're going to be stuck behind.
Interesting. So tell us about a failure that in the moment felt like career ending, but in the hindsight became your biggest advantage.
Oh gosh, the biggest failure. Um, like I said, I'm not perfect, so I've had plenty of failures. I think the biggest failure for me was when I was working at Nike in China. Uh, we had a few athletes were coming over, and we were not prepared in the slightest. And part of that was because the team, we were focusing on other projects, and we were behind in there, and I wasn't ready to give up on those projects with my team. And when these athletes come abroad, we were whining and dining them, and we had everything set up, but we weren't prepared for these athletes to come and spend 10 days in Asia with us and give them 110% of our undivided time. And that's where I had to focus with 3 days to go before these NBA players came over to Asia. I had to sit down and say, okay, how do we become the best versions of ourselves in the next, 72 hours? And it was me and a team of about 15 people. And I said, this is what we're going to accomplish. Here's everyone's roles. So that way, when they come, they think that this is not unorganized. This is the best event that we've put on. And we didn't sleep that much. And part of that was because we were running around, confirming all the restaurants, confirming all the venues, confirming different times, confirming transportation, security, merchandise, everything you can imagine that goes into those events for basketball players, we had to do at such an expedited speed. And I was so happy because when it came time, the players were like, this is amazing. You guys really went all out. And the team altogether, we felt like, well, it was kind of like a project being held together with staples. And we're like, we're hoping it's going to work. And my father taught me at a young age, hope is not a strategy. Hope doesn't float. And what we did is we said, okay, if something fails, what's our backup plan? And of course, things went arise. Oh, we had flight issues, or hey, this event didn't get the permits that we needed. What's our backup plan in the end? And that's where our team always had a backup plan. And then when the players left after their 10-day trip, we were then able to go back to the project that we were working on that was on hold because we were focusing with the NBA players. And we say, okay, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And that's where we had to start putting in processes, timelines, but at the same time, we learned time management. And that's where I really got to understand prioritizing what needs to happen now, what can happen tomorrow, what can we do next week, and what can be done in a month. And having, whether it's a spreadsheet, and there's so many AI tools out there that will tell you, like Monday.com is a good one, or Trello. And Trello is actually free, that I use for a lot of my personal events, that allows me to tell people, hey, here's this project, here's when it's supposed to happen, and here's some different action items. And if those action items don't check off this box, I get an email because I'm assigned to it, or someone else is assigned to it, and we're falling behind. And it keeps us up to date. Again, this is in 2014, 2015, 2016 with Nike. We didn't have that. We had Excel spreadsheets and sticky notes that were like, okay, we hope this works. Let's see if it does. And it ended up working out tremendously.
That's very interesting. So, from Nike's elite athletes in China to boardrooms in Dallas, what's the most unexpected leadership lesson you carried from the basketball court into the tech?
I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest unexpected leadership lesson is that in tech, it moves fast. And that's where tech is evolving. Times are changing, especially in AI. It seems like AI is speeding up processes 10 times year over year, if not month over month. And that's where you have to think more forward of what's going to happen, not in the next month, but what's going to happen in 6 months, in a year. What are some new barriers that we're going to have to break into? And how do we get there before our competition? How do we, as a company together, grow? And how do we, as a team, make sure this happens? And that's where the leadership for me is speed to market. We got to go fast. We got to do it correctly. Where with Nike, it was very laid back of we've done this year over year. We know what to accomplish, but here's something different that we need, that we maybe want to change. Where with the startup world, a lot more of it is we need to change this in the next week. What's our action plan? And you better come with a plan. That was something that all my bosses told me is if there is a problem, you need to come with me with one or two solutions, because otherwise, this is uncharted territory, and don't expect me to fix this for you. You have to own it. And that was something that was very not unexpected, but eye-opening, especially in the tech world.
Hmm. Hmm. Great. And one more question. Fast forward 5 years, what will customer success leaders be doing that would sound crazy?
Oh gosh. I think the biggest thing is customer success leaders are going to be owning a book of business. And when I say that is they're not just managing a team and saying, you have to go and do this. And we're sitting in our cushy desks in our offices and saying, you guys go out. I think customer success leaders are really going between now and then are going to find themselves saying, if I want this to work, I have to be in the field. I have to be taking phone calls, not only to understand the product, but understand the customers. Again, customers will tell you what you think, but if you're not having those conversations with them, those honest conversations, one, you're not being a good leader, but two, being in customer success is all about working with people. And that's where, for me personally, I think that you are going to have a book of business. You're going to have to own it, embrace it, and not just pawn it off to someone else. And that's where I'm very excited about customer success. I know a lot of people, if you were to ask that question in customer success, would say, oh, AI is going to replace. It's not. The AI, it's going to enhance how we work together. It might take some jobs away, but it also will create new jobs for people.
Right, I totally agree. And thank you, AJ, for coming to my show and sharing your industry experiences to help our listeners.